So I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Mark, maybe you can.
I have one. Call to order, approval of minutes, and update on Pine Woods are the first three.
So we're going
And we'll come back to the Pine Woods, I think, because Randy, I'm sure, would want to be part of that.
All right, then, you
So
want to do the minutes or approval of minutes?
did
to wait
Liz,
till after the,
yeah,
Wait till everybody's here.
yeah. I mean, Liz usually does them.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we just,
I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay?
Okay.
Just 2 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
In this interlude, so I've been working on this required section of the housing plan on challenges to producing affordable housing. I've made a lot of progress. If anybody has some ideas of how to get information on infrastructure and environmental issues, I mean, we do have an old, with a 1996 comprehensive plan, but has anything else been written since then? I sent
when you say infrastructure, what are we talking about?
extended sewers, that extended water, being the key ones. There's also another kind of issue, I hear now and then about the question on fire protection and lack of volunteers potentially.
We have 4 new volunteers, so it's not so much an issue. And certainly we have all fire covered. In the long term, we may do some regionalization, but that's an ongoing project that's at least a year out. So I think fire is a non-issue.
Good.
We absolutely have coverage, and you have mutual response, where all the towns cover each other's towns. So, even when we've had fires like the fire at Mackinac last year, Lennox was on the scene very quickly, Lee, all the surrounding towns respond. It's more a cost issue in terms of looking in the future, not as a public safety issue.
Is there a map that shows the extent of sewer connections?
Yeah, the sewer would be, have you reached out to Tony Campetti?
No.
All right, so Tony Campetti is the superintendent of sewer, and Mike Buffoni is the superintendent of water, and they sit right next to each other down at the plant, and either
Okay,
one.
that's what I'll do. I'll reach out to those two people and get, so Tony Campetti and
And Michael Buffoni.
Michael Buffoni, okay. Terrific.
And then are there other pieces of information you need in order to do
The rest of it, I think I've been able to kind of cobble together, related to kind of financing issues, to transportation, to zoning. I've done an analysis of kind of the zoning bylaw and what just listed some constraints, but also listed some provisions that could be helpful in boosting kind of affordable housing or smart growth development, community perceptions issues. So I've kind of, took a stab at those things, but it was just kind of the infrastructure, the environmental concerns that might pop up. But what, we can always, the process is I can draft it and then you guys can edit it based on what makes sense.
So Karen, not to put you on the spot, but let's talk for timing for just a minute. So when do you think you would have a draft of that section of the housing production plan?
I'm pretty much done with it except for that section on infrastructure environmental. So it's a matter of, contacting
two.
these gentlemen. Oh, yeah. Oh,
A week
yeah.
or two?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe before our next meeting. Hello, Bruce.
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can. Thank you. And Randy's going to be here momentarily. She called to say she was delayed shortly. So we've started, we've skipped the first couple of items and we're starting to, on the discussion of the housing production plan.
Okay.
And I think everybody received, I sent out to all of you this week the write-up that Karen did that we're going to be discussing today. I have a hard copy for anyone who is here, who, would you two like one?
I have one, but
You have one? With the back, with the other things as well?
the flex parcel stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we start and go through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I assimilated information from a variety of sources, including the meetings that we've had and the survey, the workshop, some other reports, such as the diagnostic report on zoning, the resilient housing initiative information, et cetera, to come up with this list of strategies that seem to have some support. I think, for a 5-year plan, this list is too extensive, but there might be things that we're missing too. So the idea was to have a discussion about what makes the most sense to include in the plan. And I'll take it from there and flesh it out in a draft, another section of the housing plan.
Can we take a 15-second break?
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow.
Sorry, I need to.
No, it's so unpleasant.
What happens?
Your paperwork.
What happens during a Zoom bomb? Somebody starts saying obscenities and things, or? Yeah. That's all.
No,
It's on.
What's on?
Okay. Well, maybe what we could do is start through some of the zoning strategies. I should also say that I think there have been some discussions and probably will be some more in the planning board about zoning changes or possible zoning changes. So as we kind of look at these and decide which ones we might want to focus on as part of the housing production plan, we may want to reach out and have a kind of joint discussion with the planning board. And I don't know, Patrick, if there have been discussions also in the select board on zoning issues recently, but.
Not so much, but
Okay.
I'm sure they'll come up with no winner.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello,
Afternoon stuff.
we have a quorum. Bruce and Michaela are here.
Okay.
And Randy, we skipped over the first couple of items until you got here. And so we've started on the discussion of the housing production plan.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
My apologies.
You can keep going.
I have a question. This first paragraph or first 5 bullet points looks as though the production plan should really get very specific in identifying properties or areas or zones or places where we would consider suitable. So it really
Yes.
starts to put some meat on the bone about
Yes, all these.
this
have
is
to be
where we
addressed.
can do something, or we think we can do
Or we
something.
want to try to do something in these areas.
All right,
Yeah.
so that starts to get down to the actual specific locations.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I should say, though, that, the state that doesn't grant any demerits if you don't kind of fulfill the strategies in the plan or meet production goals. So I think it's kind of your best sense of what directions you want to take. And to try to plan.
Yeah.
And I think in some of those cases, if we don't know the specifics, we could say we want to identify 2 or 3 areas that might be potential, and we'll be working on that if we don't know which ones they are at the moment.
Well, you already know a couple of them that's been discussed, so, but, yeah.
Okay.
Well, specific sites which the municipality will encourage the filing of permit projects. So yeah, I guess we have talked about a couple of specific things.
But Patrick, is there, well, to my knowledge, there's not something that the town actually owns that would be appropriate, or that the town plans to ask for proposal on. Is that right?
Not to my knowledge, but, you know, it had a fourth floor on this building or something.
I know there's, helicopters, things that could float in, but
Yes.
other than that,
No, I think that there's a question of, not off the top of my head, no.
Is that because we don't have any town-owned properties, or we don't?
Oh, my Coke.
Sorry.
No, I got it.
more important. Okay, let's get this man. Coke. All right.
No, I just feel like, we don't, there's no land I know of that's, I mean, look at, we've got the old service station that we could conceivably do something with I mean, we're in conversations around consolidating fire. I mean, so I don't know. It's conceivable that there are, but I certainly can't speak to any actual proposals that we have. But yeah, the town owns land, lots of land. So, and buildings.
And
Yeah.
I don't know when the last time we saw a list of maybe properties under tax liens or something like that. Is there much there? Or-
It's a slow process. I think there's one property I know of that's pretty run down that is in what's called tax title, I think it's called.
Yep.
And I think that, of course, in the best case scenario, we work something out with typically their folks who pass away, and it's not clear who the heirs and descendants are. And we always work really hard to try to find them. Nobody's, we're not looking to kind of, so, but, these things come up. And I think that something general like that we could address without, being presumptuous or, sort of,
Identifying specific properties.
yeah, right.
I keep hearing about this property off Route 102. Is there a town-owned property off 102 that is suitable for development?
None that I know of, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. This is the roots, well,
It's been mentioned a couple times in meetings.
Do you mean 7?
no, I've heard that, man.
No,
I never looked.
I'm wondering if you're thinking of the property that's for sale. It's not owned by the town. But isn't there a
Oh,
property
that's right, Jan.
for sale?
Jan said across from the
Is that the one across from Pine Woods?
I think so.
yes,
yeah.
Pine Woods in the collection, the trash.
So it's not town-owned.
And
Looks like
that,
that would require, I mean, just eyeballing it, it looks like that would require a huge investment because it's below grade. And so I suspect that there's wetlands and other things there that would make it very, very difficult and expensive to do something. But
And the
I was
reason-
interested, I think Randy and I may have talked about that, the one on Route 7 that used to be a school, some school in days gone by near across the road from the defunct gas station.
Yeah.
Does the town own the gas
yeah,
station?
let's kind of go through those one at a time. The one on 102 also has a frontage on North Church Street. It's my understanding it was not built on because we found a really rare endangered flowering species there, and it has now been mapped by, don't shake your head like that, endangered species are important. And it's now mapped by Natural Heritage as such. And if they could have built a house, they might have. I can't speak for the owner of that parcel, but It's probably more likely that land ends up in conservation possibly, but I have no idea. I don't know if that side of 102, I would assume is what they're talking about. And I think that's just over 20 acres maybe. And then on the Route 7 property, gentleman, Mr. Gittlemaker, actually has been in preliminary just contact with us. Is that reasonable to say?
Right. Why don't I just update you? I happened to have a conversation with him, compliments of Patrick.
This is the Levon?
Yes,
Right.
right. And the gentleman who owns it who's not the name that we keep saying, the name we keep saying is Warner, but he's an agent. This man is Middleman,
Gittlemaker, maybe Min.
Anyway, I spoke to him just this afternoon, and he wanted to come to our meeting today, but he's not on the agenda. So I asked him to come, to approach us and get on the agenda for our next meeting. He has a number of plans, he says, and he's very, very, very interested in us. And he thinks the right use for his property is 40 affordable housing units. And so he has two developers, or I don't know exactly who they are, but some colleagues of his that he wants to come and make a presentation to us. So I said I thought it would be most appropriate for him. He's going to call me this week, and I'm going to try to get briefed on exactly what he's thinking, and then schedule so that he can then brief everybody if it sounds like a reasonable conversation to have. So that's about 7 acres. Patrick, am I right about that?
It's 70, it's about 70.
Is it about 7? There's a whole lot of issues there. Historic materials, wetlands, all the
Yeah.
properties that, or the
Okay.
problems that go with properties that haven't been developed. And I asked him about asbestos and all. He had some rather, he had some interesting ideas. And so, and he's also contacted people who will come and clear the land and for the materials that are in. So I think it's worthwhile for us all to hear his plan. And he lives in New York, so he would come in person to us. He would come over Zoom, and he said he would have his colleagues with him.
Right.
So that may be a parcel.
And that's a former camp, or,
Yes.
yeah.
There's an old hotel on the site, a number of cottages, and there's one house that's completely in
Falling apart.
well, I would say it's even past that. It's,
All right, so are we on the second bullet? Is that where we are? Way at the top.
We started talking about municipally owned property, and we will have to identify.
All right, but that's the third bullet. I would like to just spend a few seconds on each bullet, if that's okay with the chair.
Yes.
The first one, identification of zoning districts or geographic areas. I think that what I like about that idea is that we can suggest potential modifications on a district by district basis, which I think would have both the lowest risk and the most political support. For example, if we're going to look for density, I think the density, the closest to downtown makes the most sense. It's the village concept. It's an easy lift in town compared to some other more controversial proposals. And I think that the two specific things I think we should talk about in the first bullet are if we wanted to do something like a tiny home overlay district for young housing production that would allow for more density anywhere, in certain areas of town, very small homes that would be appropriate for, the very young and the sort of single elderly. In exchange for more density, tiny homes, more density. And then the other one would be looking at, RC, downtown, basically like the residential zones right around downtown, and looking at whether there was more flexibility in zoning around either lot size or 2, 3 family or whatever. We've got, and then I think finally, and I don't know if we can legally do it, but looking at making it easier to split up very large, homes. We have a lot of 4, 5, 6, 7,000 square foot houses in this town that are prohibitively expensive as single family homes to renovate, but that, in making it easier to turn into kind of a 2, 3, 4 unit. We've got a lot of them on Main Street that were already converted into condos. I don't know I don't know much about our regulations in that, but it seems some got done, and I want to, I think that those are 3 things on that first bullet that we could maybe talk about. Does anybody have any thoughts on those?
You see the tiny homes being some tied into ADUs at all, accessory dwelling units?
I think they could be standalone.
Separate issue.
Let's have a district where if you had 5 acres, you could build 25 of them. I don't care. I mean, it just seems like tiny homes are a great low footprint, environmentally.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And it doesn't have to be, I think that the international definition of a tiny home is 400 square foot or less. I'm thinking tiny is maybe 600 or 800, but
Often called bungalow style or cottage style. Cottage style is confusing in
bungalow.
this community.
I like bungalow.
But I think the issue of tiny houses is actually 2 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
One is the backyard detached structure that can be really well designed, and sometimes they call them granny flats
But we're
or.
not even there yet.
No,
Yeah.
but the other is the kind of pocket neighborhood, the bungalows, the cottage style house around a cluster of open space. That's good infill. So this is, the kind of 2 components of that could make sense.
Is there land, in a mile circumference around the village that would have room for tiny homes? I mean,
Well, there's lots of land and, all over the place, but whether or not, I don't know that I'm just basically throwing out their ideas on, and I think that the tiny home idea and the village idea are 2 distinctly separate ideas. I think that where we'll get the most support in town across all the folks with opinions on zoning, and there's a lot of them, is in density in downtown. So regardless of whether it's density as an ADU or density as tiny homes or density as in converting a big house into 3 or 4 units, like the Henderson home is the yellow house on Main Street's for sale. He's already got it converted into 3 units. I don't know. Can those be, it's like, there's questions on, on hallways and all that stuff you have to deal with that stuff, but you get my point.
I thought that zoning didn't allow residential above commercial in the downtown.
residential above commercial, 2nd floor and up, you mean?
I thought that it didn't allow residential on the 1st floor.
I think the 1st floor was the controversy. We didn't want to lose commercial.
You can do the 2nd floor and up. Maybe I'm wrong. But
I'll recheck because I was really kind of doing a zoning analysis and it seemed, it was also part of the diagnostic report that really kind of forbids, really limits any kind of residential development in the downtown based on current zoning.
yeah, I think the idea was
Discussed about potentially changing that.
the downtown zone also is really limited. You've got, you got RC and you've got, we're basically talking about Main Street and a little bit of some of the side streets. It's not even the other half of Main Street down by the cemetery isn't in the downtown zone.
Gotcha, okay.
So it's basically like where there's the businesses now that I think that the idea was to maintain the businesses, but, and we gave a couple of a bit of a tax cut last Thursday. So there you go. Hopefully we'll fill some of them. So I don't know if there's thoughts on basically tiny homes.
Patrick,
and
can
looking
I
at-
get just sense of the committee about whether any of those ideas are things we want to pursue?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sure.
I would be in favor of considering a tiny home overlay district if we can find the right location for it.
Right.
And I don't know how many units, but yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I'm not sure how they would be lower priced, but they would presumably be available to the entire market, right?
Oh, God, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. This would just be, you know, it would be just,
It could be bought up as second homes, as pied-à-terres in Stockbridge.
yeah. And it could also be that we write it in so that, you know, 30% has to be affordable and the others are market. Market's going to be available to anybody.
Okay.
And the great thing with tiny homes is that they're really easy. You know, you settle on your design and, you know, and a lot of times they're pre-manufactured and you know, it can be just a tiny fraction of what new construction costs per square foot around here right now.
Do they have cellars, foundations, or are they?
Look, I don't want to, I mean,
There's a wide range of
Yeah.
these kind of building types, yeah.
I don't think we want,
Get into that level of.
I don't think we want,
Trying to
you
picture them.
know, I think we want things with at least a slab, what, you know, or a foundation, probably not mobile home parks, but, you know, I'm not against mobile homes, but I don't think that's necessarily fits the character of our neighborhoods. But, you know, something well-designed on a slab, you know, that is a small, you know, some of them could be vacation homes, some of them could be affordable homes for single, you know, 20-somethings or whatever, you know, any age, you know?
But the sense I get is that we'd be supportive of these ideas.
I support them, but, you know.
Yeah, I certainly think that's good if we can, if there really is the land to do it. I'm having a little trouble picturing.
I really love that idea, especially because it gives seniors an opportunity to downsize, but still feel like they have independence and they have a community around them as well, which was really nice. And also, you know, there's lots of options for building in terms of like helical piers to put houses on and things that are like less environmentally impactful. So I think that idea, Patrick, and the idea of turning the large cottages, how do you turn some of those into multiple residences is really good because, you know, it's very few people who want an 8,000 square foot home that they have to pay the electric bill for these days. So that makes a lot of sense, I think.
And along those lines, specifically downtown, let me think how to say this. I don't want to speak out of school. There's a large commercial parcel that is currently with commercial use in a well, I don't want to say too much. The owner has reached out to me and said, you know, he's near retirement and would like to get our opinion on how to change the use of that parcel. And it's big and it's within walking distance of here. So, yeah, there are some opportunities downtown and I don't want to speak for him, so I'm not going to mention any more, but offline, we could talk about that one too. You know, but yeah, so I think that the point is creative thinking, things come up and I think that being ready to do things, this is one, to Michaela's point, would require the helical, you know, unfortunately, a lot of downtown is in the floodplain, so.
Does the production plan need to be approved by town meeting before it's given to the state? No.
Only by the planning board and select board.
Okay. Oh, and select board and planning board.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important step. Obviously, we're not required to do a production plan because we're at the 10%, but nevertheless, I think building consensus is really smart for us. Yes.
Yeah.
Bruce hasn't weighed in his.
Bruce, do we have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think that the tiny house option, I think is a good one, for people that really want to downsize, and it allows us to create something that's really affordable. I don't, I'm probably where Michaela is in terms of taking the 6,000 or 8,000 square foot homes and modifying them to create smaller units within that property. So I would be more in favor of the tiny home concept, or some smaller homes that developed on a larger parcel and create kind of a garden community. But we haven't really gotten to that bullet yet.
In order to do these things, we'd need a really specific plan of the town with specific areas that we're going to designate as being able. Because you don't just say, oh, okay, any place in the town.
No.
You designate sections of the town where we think
I'd actually like to get a zoning map. Has
It's
that.
right online, and there's a giant one in Michael's office, and
I think we should all have one of those with us.
yeah, well, and you can look at existing physical zones, but you can also do an overlay that covers multiple zones. An overlay district can apply to different areas of town to allow specific things. I think you can also do an overlay district that's specific to a type of property, X number of acres, or has an existing 5,000 square foot house on it or more. There's a lot of things that we could conceivably do. Yeah, so the two things to look at.
You mean you can do it on one property? So if you have a large property that has,
You can't spot zone. You can't spot zone for one property, but, two things to familiarize yourself with. One would be the zoning map, which kind of talks about, this is 2 acre, this is 1 acre, this is 4 acre. And the other is read our cottage area bylaw, because that's one which says if it has a certain type of house, in this case, a large mansion from the 1800s, then they've got options to develop that are separate and distinct from what everyone else can do. So, an example of that is Elm Court or 37 Narrow Lake in DeSisto, or Eden Hill, Eden Hill with the Marion Zone, if they ever want to develop that. I'm not saying they do, of course. I'm just saying that those cottage area properties, fall into a distinct class. That is not based on geography. It's based on the having 80, in this case of our bylaw, it's 80 acres and a building,
Oh, 80 acres.
80 acres.
Right. That's right. Now you could, and I'm not, once again, I know I'm not advocating for anything for all of you people watching, but, you could consider, the town could consider making it 40 acres instead of 80 acres.
Right.
It could make it 20 acres instead of 80 acres. It could make it 20 acres in one zone, not 80 acres. There's a lot of things we could do that.
I think the Lennox zoning bylaw, a similar one is 25 acres.
Yeah.
And they've actually named all of the actual properties that fall under that bylaw.
Right. And I think just generally under zoning stuff, we can laundry list it. That's one that I think generally, we probably shouldn't advocate for 15 actual projects that we would take on because we don't have the bandwidth to do it. But we certainly can talk about some examples of things we could do with zoning that would help with the housing production without changing the character of the town or the character of our neighborhood.
Lower hanging fruit type.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And the first one on here is the ADU, and I know we have some disagreement about how we would change that or what the specifics would be on an ADU.
Right. So are we done with the first 1, 2, 3, 5 bullets? Because I think the 5th bullet is one that I think we should I'm personally more interested in building housing in Stockbridge than in participating in housing outside of Stockbridge. I think that's a way some communities punt on the hard work of building housing in their own community. So.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's not the objective, but we ought to be aware of all the other things that are going on in the region and be cooperative if there are some that make sense for us.
Well, if you go, for example, for another round of the housing rehab program, that would be a natural thing to fit under this. There are things that we can add here that's, not heavy lifting at all, that makes sense, yeah.
I think there is a plan to do that, for sure, because everybody's aware that we were not, we did not get our allocation from the last time that we did.
Yes,
And the only one on number 5 that I would suggest that we consider, the 5th bullet, the participating regional collaborations would be, I know there's a lot of interest in Lennox in looking at BSO, Shakespeare and Company. It could be true with Berkshire Theater Festival, looking at ways to encourage on-campus summer housing as a way to take some of the pressure off of the rental housing in the region. Because there's a lot of units that get gobbled up every year, for use 3 months a year. And And I know that's a priority of at least two of the selectmen in Lennox. And I think that that would be one regional collaboration
Yeah.
that we could really look at. Because, you know, when you can get $15,000 a month or whatever, $12,000 a month, you know, it's a whole lot less likely, even at market rate, year-round rental, let alone at an affordable rental. And I'm not suggesting that, you know, I just feel like, that there is so little rental housing around here. And one of the reasons for that is that, you know, we got
Season,
the seasonal rentals, really they're not short-term rentals, they're month-to-month rentals, but for 3-4 months at a time. And we all kind of, it's something that obviously we would need to be partnering with our friends on, our nonprofit friends, but it's something I think that we could at least address as a goal, you know?
is that something that potentially, if, for example, if the BSO were to agree to build some of the short-term housing for over the summer, that we would be able to, in collaboration with them, look toward state or federal funding to help construct those?
I don't know that there would be any funding to construct temporary, you know, kind of seasonal housing, but as the market gets tighter and tighter, you know, the month-to-month rentals have easily doubled in price in the last 5 years. And it could just be economically, it makes sense for them, you know, but once again, you know, does Lennox and Stockbridge zoning support seasonal housing? And that's really as much a zoning question as it is it's two tracks. It's zoning, but it's also making a financial case for it, you know, and I think that it's just a conversation that I think that we should have. And I personally had it with some folks in Lennox, and there's parcels in both Lennox and Stockbridge. You know, like I said, there's a lot of land on the Shakespeare and Company campus. There's the large parcel in Lennox north of the main gate of Tanglewood. There is definitely land that would be conducive to that, and the Lennox, both those parcels are on Lennox sewer that I just mentioned. I mean, it's easy peasy, you know, from a point of view of kind of infrastructure. So, you know.
That's a good idea.
I know that Shakespeare and Company is looking at how to deploy the large tract of land that they have, because I don't know if everyone knows, sort of the whole back half of their property fronts on Old Stockbridge Road.
We consider that the front half where I'm from, but yes.
Okay, Patrick? There is land that fronts on Old Stockbridge Road.
Yes. It's the Stockbridge side of the land, yes, I know.
That is vacant, completely vacant right now.
I know.
And I know that they are looking into making a joint venture with the developer to put housing on that. But, so I don't know that.
You know, Stockbridge is right across the street from that. That's why I said that, you know. So
Well, it is in
on the other side of Old Stockbridge Road is Stockbridge, and then it's Lennox on the Shakespeare side. Yeah. Yeah, there used to be a hockey rink. My dad was the manager.
A hockey rink on that land?
You know where the main stage is?
That's where the rehearsal space is. It used to be a hockey rink.
A giant
Oh, the
hockey rink.
that hockey rink, that was part of the school.
Yeah. No, it was the H. George Wild, you know, Wild, like the Vanderbilts, Elm Court was the H. George Wild Sports Center. It had basketball courts, tennis courts, and a hockey rink. Yes. Back in
Now
the day.
they store their sets and things.
Yeah.
But anyway, there are institutions here that we also,
Yeah.
I don't know if, we don't have that as in here. I think that conversations with the major nonprofit institutions about housing. Because
I
all
think
of them-
that's as much a conversation as with leadership in Lennox. If we're going to talk about regional collaboration, that's probably the top of the list one as far as I could see. You know, because that's something that's just kind of nudging people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so our next whole category is zoning strategies. Karen, are these the ones that have come out of the discussions, both the workshop and
Yeah.
and all of
Yeah.
this? And I think a couple of these are also mentioned in the zoning diagnostic.
That's right. No, coming from that whole list of sources that I, mentioned before, including meetings here. So these seem to be the things that we heard echoes from, a couple of sources.
So and when I sent this out, I included the zoning bylaw, the 6.1.2
Yeah, why do you include that one?
copy of that. Pardon?
It was a major discussion at the last meeting, so I thought maybe you guys
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
have another opportunity to talk about it and whether you want to address it or not. And yeah, I mean,
And then also the one that you mentioned, Karen, which is the flex bylaw, which has a little bit of discussion of which you must be familiar with, Patrick, since you're the reference point on it.
In general, I think that if you can get the argument against a building, of course, is impervious space. It's the impact of density on environmental concerns, and the argument on the flex parcel is just if it's just as easy to build 3 units that total 5,000 square feet as it is to build 1 unit that totals 5,000 square feet, it's the same amount of infrastructure, but 3 homes, not 1, so I think that.
But 3 homes could have impact on schools, sewer, water versus 1 large one.
yeah, I think it depends on what your real goals are here,
Yeah, I'm just really asking, I don't understand the point. Can you help me?
I was literally just talking about the argument against large house density. If you take a R4 and you allow people to build, a 3-family on it by right, and those 3 families can all be 5,000 square foot each, you're basically tripling the amount of impact on the land. But, I think it's certainly possible to take a look at that and only make it available where there's, access to sewer or some kind of other infrastructure. We do have a lot of capacity in that system, and it's improving with the, I&I, work that is ongoing to repair where we have leaky clay pipes from,
So this would be to,
former Cleveland era.
this would be to convert an existing structure into, or
This would just be,
to build.
this would be basically,
New build.
it's right now it's a little harder to build a 2-family, you need more land. Even harder to build a 3-family, and it would just be basically it'd be when I wrote it, the idea was to acknowledge the concerns of folks who feel there's environmental impact to density, so, you kind of, the trade-off is rather than just let it be of unlimited size, which effectively just triples density, you kind of do a trade-off for smaller homes,
and more affordable.
Yeah.
As opposed to the 5,000 square foot house, being able to break it up, it'd be more affordable. And maybe there are some opportunities for the Housing Trust to subsidize some of those units, to integrate some affordability. The idea of a social and economic diversity. I think that, we did hear too that allowing 2-family by right was, in more districts made some sense too. I mean, it's kind of related.
I think that was a very strong message I heard, that they shouldn't have to hire a lawyer and go through. You have to begin to really lay out the zoning though. If you allow all properties to be 2 families, you do have to have some, you can't have half an acre be a 2-family. Of course you can do that, but you have to look and see what the consequences of, say, doing it across the whole town.
Look at construction, even moderate housing, not luxury housing is running, what, $7,800 a square foot right now. So to build a luxury 2,000 square foot home, and Joanna's had her hand up for a while, but just as a aside.
Okay.
But let me just, so 2,000 square foot home, which is not that big, at $700 a square foot for luxury housing is $1.4 million if it's, if it's custom built. So we bring that down to 400 a square foot and it's sort of bare bones, 2,000 square feet, you're looking at $800,000. All right. So you're not really, the difference between what an affordable mortgage could be and that is, there's such a huge gulf. We're not going to be building 2-family houses all throughout the town. It's just right now housing is too expensive to build, but maybe it's like a prefab, like what Sally did, and now all of a sudden the cost is down to 400,000. And if you could do 2,000 square foot houses for $800,000, and that's literally what she spent a couple, in the last 24 months on her house. Now you're.
Is that the one on Pine Street?
No, it's on Rouseneck Mountain. Then now you're talking about a plan that, that with the right guardrails, as you're saying, might provide for that workforce housing stock that we're talking about. I think that's kind of.
So it's along the same idea as the tiny houses, but would be.
Yeah, but for like people with, actual children, or whatever, it's basically, it's the tiny houses really are going to work for a single person or a really close couple who get along really well.
You have 2 bedrooms, though. You can do that in a bungalow house easily. And so a young couple starting out, that's a good size for.
Yeah.
If you look on Mackinac, all down by the lake, those quote bungalow houses were about that size. They had 2 bedrooms. And
Are there any of the zoning strategies that Karen has laid out here that any of us would say we don't want to, or they're not the highest priority to pursue right now?
I think that accessory dwelling units are an interesting concept that a lot of people seem to be interested in talking about. But if you look at the actual implementation of them, let's look at a couple towns. So in Lennox and Great Barrington, they put an ADU bylaw in and relatively few units actually were put in. In Egremont, they put in an ADU bylaw that was not restricted to owner occupied, and it actually had a skew on local housing prices because the only folks who put them in were folks who kind of could afford to put them in. And it didn't really help at all. It was just made kind of properties more valuable because now all of a sudden there were two livable units on it. I think we should talk about that one last, just because I think it's a lightning rod for folks who kind of want to make a economic or financial analysis based on the potential skews in the market. I admit it comes across as singling people out in a way that I don't think is helpful right now. And I just feel like there's a lot of other things we could do that are not going to be nearly as controversial, because if we're going to do ADUs, I'm going to want them to be owner occupied, and
Well, there might.
not everybody feels that way, and it's just sort of, it's going to be another fight. And I feel like there's so many things we can have consensus on.
Well, it seems to me that there might also be ways to do an ADU that doesn't open it up to the entire world, like, as you say, Egremont. I'm not familiar with Egremont's situation, but it would seem to me that there are ways that one could modify it that would address your concerns of, not wanting to have it inflate prices further, but would also make it available for people who are not full-time residents.
Yeah, like what are some of those ideas?
So that you basically have it so that you can only rent one of the units, and it can't be a short-term rental. So you're not promoting the situation, and that would apply whether you're a full-time resident or not a full-time resident. You can only rent one of the units, and it cannot be a short-term rental. So what you're doing in that is creating units that would be longer-term rental for
Yep.
the community, which is, I thought, what we were,
No, it's a great idea. The challenge that we have right now with the existing short-term rental bylaw we have is simply enforcement. We don't have a lot of staff in this building. The enforcement is like kind of, you want to create incentives, not sort of rules that are easily violated that are hard to enforce. And we don't really have the capacity. Once again, we can start handing out $300 a day fines. If somebody violates a rental policy, you can't, once you give them a certificate of occupancy, it's not like you can, maybe you can revoke it. Some cities and towns actually, when there's a change of ownership, the certificate of occupancy does not go with the sale. It has to be reattested to.
Absolutely.
But it just creates a lot of rigmarole in town hall to manage that. That's one thing. There's the enforcement question. And the second question, I just would point out that it's a lot easier, if you're talking about a short-term rental going for $400 or $500 a night, it's a lot easier to find management companies who make sure it goes well than if you're talking about a $1,500 a month rental. Massachusetts has some of the strongest,
Patrick, I mean, the whole point of having ADUs, even for full-time residents, is to have the longer-term rentals. It's not to have, someone be able to do a short-term rental.
The income to the owner.
No, that's not
that's
right.
a big affordability issue.
No.
If somebody whose cost burden has an income stream, it allows them to stay in the house, allows them to make some improvements, that type of thing, has a real relevance to affordability.
And the only way, I know of at least half a dozen people, just I met at Bullard Woods and Golden Meadows, who are young couples that in other towns, they're sort of at the forefront of the Berkshire County ADU thing. And they were specifically able to afford their home because they have that short-term rental attached to the home, that they're getting the income stream that subsidizes over half their mortgage. Short-term rentals is a key part of affordability for if you want folks to be able to raise a family here. And most people can't afford mortgages on what they make, even at $500,000-$600,000 houses. But if you add that little apartment above the garage, and even that they can get $300 or $400 a night for 90 nights a year, that makes a huge difference on the mortgage. So I don't think that.
But it doesn't do anything for having more of the kind of middle.
Well, it helps young people afford to live in the town. That's the whole point. It helps the teacher or whoever afford a house because they've got a rental stream. And it's a little more work because they've got to change the sheets at the end of the 3-day weekend. But it's the only path to affordability for a lot of young people because housing prices are so outrageous. I mean,
80 years would be solid 1-year leases.
not for.
That's how typically all the bylaws are done. They're long-term, 1-year
Yeah.
leases. They're year-round units.
Which is still a good stream of income for the,
It can be,
It's some, but
if they can afford to create one, that's another aspect of it. That,
yes, this,
building an ADU,
yeah.
look, and I think our position should be if it's an owner occupied property, you can rent it however you want to rent it. It's, the average price now the average assessed price is $650 in this town, and average sale price right now is $750, and that's average. The only way people are going to afford that is if they have some cash flow with it, and I don't think we should be telling them they can only rent it at a certain level. I think that any and all, look,
Well, I think we aren't going to resolve this tonight.
I get it.
But I would
It's good to
argue,
hear it, though.
I would argue that reviewing the accessory dwelling unit bylaw is something it should be on our list of things.
I think that Chuck will put it on the select board list in the next few weeks or a few months. And I think that there'll be a robust conversation around what some of these strategies are.
Plus, we don't have to have all the details worked out as part of the plan. I mean, we can establish reasons to encourage new zoning for ADUs and demonstrate that there has been considerable support during the planning process and make some, general recommendations, but we do not have to get into the weeds as far as the plan itself.
Yeah.
And does everyone else agree that that should be on our list, or do you all disagree?
But ADUs,
Yeah,
Some form.
in some
in
form.
some form, with
ADUs, yeah.
whatever the rules are, but in some
We have
form.
an ADU bylaw right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
the house
it's
was built
really,
before 1991 and,
it's really so
And
limited.
it's all.
Very limited.
So,
They don't even have
A lot of the
ADUs.
housing was built before 1991.
the accessory structure has to have been built before.
Yes.
And it really doesn't deal much with the interior. It only kind of deals with
Yeah.
detached structures.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's
You
not
could change
even
the
a
date.
definition of ADUs.
Yeah.
Although I understand the planning department the planning board has had an application for a detached structure that it approved. So
Mm-hmm. No.
there is a limited,
Yeah, the applicant decided not to put a kitchen in and so they could do it by right. So it's not going to be housing. It's going to be a bedroom.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
I don't know who PCA is, but they have their hand up.
It's Joanna. Joanna, did you want to speak? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Yeah, no, I just wanted to chime in. I attended the housing meeting that we had, the breakout groups a couple months ago, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of people were supportive of the tiny home development idea. I just put basically my 2 cents in the chat there, but something that I'd really love to see you guys consider in doing the housing plan is if a parcel of land were to become available to the town, if there was a way to, subdivide the land into like 1 or 2 acre parcels and sell those to allow people to build the tiny homes that they want. I mean, that would be preferable because I have something in mind that I know would really suit my family. And the biggest hurdle for me is finding a piece of land in Stockbridge that would be affordable and a small enough parcel where I don't have to buy more land than I actually need. Um, and I really think a tiny home development, kind of similar to like Pine Woods, but with a cul-de-sac, but everybody can build their own, type of building, within a certain range. Maybe there's like a community association with bylaws that can kind of, where the buildings have to look a certain way, maybe. But I just want to. That's really what my dream is. And I know that I've talked to a few other people here at Pine Woods that would love to do the same thing. Have a piece of land to build a tiny house on, or build something a little bit bigger. What I want to build is around 880 square feet, and that the estimated cost for building that is around 250,000. So it's really the land, having access to the land itself, because I live at Pine Woods. These buildings are prefabricated, and having lived here for almost 4 years, I'm starting to see all the ways that it was just kind of slapped together and not, built very well, and, just using cheap materials and things like that. I just don't want to personally get on the hook for, a building that's $250,000. And then, I have no input on how it was built. Maybe it was built, from some developer that was using cheap materials and cutting corners and things like that. So letting people, have access to the land and building what they want on it, they can, custom build, they can do a custom build that, is really unique for them and that they really enjoy living in, and also, fits their needs. It's not more than they need, not less than they need. And you really, it's kind of the dream, really. I personally just would love to build something. It's just the land I don't have access to. So I just wanted to throw that out there for your consideration on that topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
That's helpful. Thank you.
So what were the revised, it says revised cottage area bylaw and OSRD. What's,
Well, we already talked about having the minimum square footage potentially reduced, and Jan mentioned the
Okay,
Lennox.
good.
In the diagnostic report, which is actually, I think, a very good report, that they did for zoning, there were some recommendations regarding revisiting and revising the cottage area bylaw for a number of various provisions, and in some towns, besides the cottage area bylaw, they have just general open space residential design or development bylaws that pertain to more types of and sizes of properties. Also, if you're going to promote kind of cluster housing for these small pocket neighborhoods, zoning's going to have to allow it.
cluster housing is allowed in our zoning. We have a cluster bylaw.
I know, I saw it, but it is limiting. You can, once again, you can only do single-family units, and there's, minimum sizes and, lot size. To do kind of the cluster a lot of communities are doing, probably is not going to happen under your cluster.
No, but we could do cluster under 40B,
You could do cluster on a 40B. That would be
and that
a
gives
good-
us a chance to
That
let
would
the
be a
town.
good use of
Right.
40B.
So you look at one of these parcels, and there's, 3 or 4 we talked about today, and you do a 40B that maybe has a little more density, and that gives the town a chance to sort of dip its toe in the water without necessarily changing, it basically
That's
kind of allows people to come along with, and and see it,
Okay.
so.
As I understand it, though, if we, the trust, got a parcel that we, through the friendly 40B, would have a lot more flexibility
Oh, yeah.
to do.
You'd have to agree to the terms and conditions of the development. You'd have to partner with the developer. So, yeah,
Right, well,
And
we're
then the
not,
zoning board of appeals, I think, approves it, right?
yes.
Yes,
Goes to the
I
Z-
hope so.
through the local initiative program.
I just have a question on the zoning strategies. Allow two-family home development by right, adopt the flex bylaw to promote small multifamily development, which I think sounds great, but it sounds like it's opening up the whole zoning can of worms, like people will think, oh, this can happen anywhere. I don't want to write a blank check to let this happen anywhere, because it basically dismantles the current zoning. If by right, people can put multifamily homes in 2 acres or the flexible multifamily development. Again, I think I'd love to see these happen as a way to address this issue, but it just sounds like it's sort of a,
Yeah, but in R4,
General.
to build this two-family in R4, you gotta go from 4 acres to 6 acres.
Right.
All right, so.
I know it can't be
But just
done.
making it so that you
Just
could build a
makes it-
two-family with 4 acres.
I'm not explaining.
Not gonna be happening.
What I'm saying is politically, the politics of just allowing multifamily by right, the multifamily development with the flex bylaw by right, some people may find that threatening when they want to preserve kind of if you do it as a blanket statement for the whole town and all the 2 and 4 acre zoning, people are like, well, I don't know where that's going to be, so
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
not going to go with this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, say, a specific proposal for a friendly 40B that's targeted to a specific piece of property. There'll still be issues around it, but at least it won't be townwide.
Well, I think building a large-scale cluster development, changing our bylaws to allow that anywhere is not gonna be politically tenable, as you're saying. I think that when we're talking about two-family, or multifamily even, it could be as much about conversion of existing large structures as sort of, it could be limited in that way, for example, because there's a lot of really big single-family homes in this town, and often it's more expensive to renovate those houses than it is to tear them down, build a new one. It's like, that's why we see so many tear downs. But I don't know. I think you're right. I think that the more that we kind of frame it in ways that is not blowing up our zoning, the more political success we're going to have.
Yeah, I want to raise that as a political
Yeah, I think it's worth
issue.
taking.
Shall we go to housing development strategy? Is
Yes,
Oh, wait, there's,
there anything else you want to say on
I
that?
think that the one thing we didn't talk about is if things are not more non-conforming, this is to the Michaela experience where she had to spend, $500,000, wasn't that the number on all your permits? I'm kidding, everyone, it's getting
I
late.
wish I had $500,000.
Spend it with the town permitting process, yes, I'm sure. No, but I think that, it's sort of if things aren't, if things are non-conforming, you have to get a special permit if what you're proposing is not more non-conforming than what's already there. And in many towns, we allow the building inspector to do that. And I've even gotten some pushback from that, but we could, for example, have a situation where we had two people have to review it. Maybe it's the building inspector and the town administrator, and that keeps it out of the special permit process, which involves lawyers and others who are, of
Michaela,
high fees and questionable morals. So,
did you have to hire a lawyer to do your project?
I believe that we did. Yeah, I think we had to spend just to get started. And we reduced the footprint of our house. We
Yeah.
actually reduced it. We had to spend probably 5,000. And the also the other challenge with the process it goes through right now that Patrick's speaking about is that it's just the time. When you're trying to get a renovation or something underway, the time is a huge suck. So it took us, I think we couldn't even start for like 3 to 5 months, just because of the time it was taking for the town to get back to us on the proposals that we submitted.
right.
So I do think that's a great idea to streamline that process and have, especially if you have the building inspector involved, there's a person with knowledge who could make a reasonable assessment. That makes a lot of sense.
I think that's a good idea too.
And if maybe it's just giving people an option. They either can get a sign off from the building inspector and the town administrator, or they can go and come in front of the board and go through the traditional approval. We could just give them an additional option, not change anything, just basically give them a second option.
Or even if the building inspector says, this is too much for me I need a second opinion. That makes sense if the building inspector and the town administrator say, this might be larger or this might be, and they want to then elevate it to, you know what I mean? Another level, that makes sense. But there are some, I think, that could be just easy things, or people who just want to turn a 3-season into a 4-season and all they're doing is boxing in their piping and spray foaming, that someone could easily say, yeah, that's fine.
There are some folks in town who are going to want to have 2 sets of eyes. That's all I'm saying. So, it's not anything more than that. But whatever it is, yeah, I think just making it easier if you're not,
We need to be aware, though, and Patrick, you're very aware of this, is that because there's such a shortage of building inspectors, that the 3 towns, I think, Stockbridge, Lennox, and Great Barrington, are now going to have a
4 towns.
collaborative.
And Lee.
And Lee's in it, too, okay. There's going to be 1 building supervisor based in Great Barrington, and then 5 building inspectors.
5 or 3? I think it's 1, 2, 4 underneath them.
4.
Maybe it's 3 underneath them. We're sharing one with, I think Great Barrington's getting, and it's, I don't know, it's 3 or 4.
Anyway, we just should be aware that there's a real shortage of inspectors. And if you start making the inspector in addition to all his other jobs, having to do this.
But you got to understand that every special permit that goes in front, the first question that we have for both Michael and the building inspector is, have you reviewed this and do you have a recommendation for us? They're reviewing it anyway. Because I never, ever, ever act on a special permit without getting, a sign off from both the building inspector and the town administrator that it's not more non-conforming. So, it's already a part of the process is my point. Yeah.
Well, then we're not adding anything.
Yeah, no, all we're literally doing is cutting, the select board out, which is an awesome idea. Yeah. On things that are no more non-conforming, it's just a layer of,
We have a few more things to do, so we should get through this.
Yes.
Jen?
So Karen, do you want to walk through the housing development strategies? And we can probably, I think a number of these are pretty straightforward, so,
Yeah, we started talking about making suitable public property available for affordable and mixed income housing. And we have to, at least offer an example of a municipally owned property. Stockbridge Housing Authority property has been mentioned before that it's publicly owned, but it's not obviously municipally
well,
owned.
the road is.
But the road, you're not developing on the road.
Yes, we are. There's a dirt road, and one of the proposals is to expand Heaton Court there's basically the old version of Prospect Hill Road is a dirt road that when they rerouted it 75 years ago or whatever, is still there, is kind of a remnant road, and it's not even paved.
Great.
And you could do a whole nother road if we reclaimed that road, and that road is owned by the town.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you.
So we just solved
Yeah,
that.
you
Check
just
it off.
solved that, yeah.
Check it off.
There you go.
Yeah.
and we could probably take the property off Route 102
We can take that out.
and,
Mystery property.
And still mention that we will look for opportunities with tax title property.
So if I think that the endangered species is a version of lobelia. We could call it Lobelia Lane if we decide to build on it.
Keep that in
Because there
mind.
used to be an endangered species on it.
This is Patrick's dream. There's
okay,
there are a number of.
Moving right along.
That idea.
And the idea of getting a donated property for small infill housing, Habitat House, some housing trusts have acquired property, fixed it up and passed them on to first-time buyers. That's harder when land costs so much.
right.
Because the subsidy costs so much. That's why if you can, create more units instead of a single unit, maybe it becomes, a little bit more economic. And it does kind of can comply with this missing middle too.
I have a question on that. If we were able to acquire some donated property and then connect with a developer to do housing on it and either provide it at no cost to the developer or at a very low cost, that would lower their costs considerably
Yes,
and might allow for the creation of a few affordable units in
That-
addition to a handful of market units.
that is a model that's being done in other communities. I mean, if the property was transferred to the Housing Trust did an RFP, selected a developer based on the terms and conditions you'd like to see as part of that property, including at least a fair amount of units, because if it's town-owned, there's got to be some significant public benefits, are affordable. That is absolutely, a great model that's been done elsewhere.
So
Yeah,
instead of putting up cash, you put up a land.
right. And then you don't have to pay for the acquisition cost. That becomes actually a subsidy to the project. It would need additional subsidies, but, that is a
That would be-
very typical model.
Okay. Good. I was just giving you a general
Okay,
there. You could use it as leverage.
And there was this whole idea of trying to, deal with incentives, ways of promoting a wider range of housing types and living arrangements instead of the single-family detached house. And we've talked about the clustered bungalow units as far as a pocket neighborhood. And also, it's been brought up a number of times, shared living arrangements, conversion of existing homes into multiple units, senior housing, starter homes have been discussed. I could just say on the shared living arrangements, it usually takes some organizational capacity to, if you're going to be promoting it townwide. They did it, I think, in Truro or at some point years ago, but it does take some coordination if you're going to try to promote it as a program.
yeah, I'm not sure we have the
Yeah.
infrastructure
Right.
in place to do
Yeah,
that.
that was That's my kind of, yeah. And then converting existing housing into long-term affordability. That's more easily done when land costs aren't as high. But it is still, something that, makes sense to look into. And if you can, focusing this on a large single-family house, converting it to multiple units and requiring a couple of those units be affordable. That's a great way of establishing a mixed income and, environment that meets some needs. So that's more doable when you have economies of scale, you have more than one unit.
I would just add though that, remember there's what's that road that goes right through the middle of town? What's it called? Oh yeah, Route 90.
Yeah.
Not all the land in Stockbridge is priced out of this world because we got, a 4-lane highway with a big barrier that goes right through the center of town. And there's a lot of land on both sides. Prado de Lana just bought like 10 acres, abuts the Mass Pike. They're going to start a farm on it. Because it's let's face it, it's a great place to start a farm because the sheep presumably don't care if the tractor trailers are doing their Jake breaks like we sometimes hear about. I'm just saying that there is land that, I think there's land, and not all of it is,
Prime real.
west side of the bowl.
It's not as desirable as,
Yeah.
It's still great land and, it's like a lot of people live on that corridor and it's fine living and, but it's not quite as expensive as even land in Great Barrington or Lenox because,
It might make sense at some point to, explore further and prepare an inventory of potential town-owned properties or privately owned properties that might be less expensive and doable as part of this plan.
yeah.
If you drive down the Mass Pike to Boston, you'll see neighborhoods all over the state that are within a few hundred yards of the pike.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
Yep.
it looked like.
And there's sometimes they have sound barriers and other strategies and, I'm just saying that there's the closer you get. And even, and you look at the farms that we have over on Route 7, right near the pike, you definitely already have, or the style of housing that's built over by the pike on Route 7. You look on the other side, like I said, on as you go from Route 7 over toward Prospect Hill, you've got a number of farms and relatively reasonably priced homes when they do go in the market. And then as you go west toward there's a lot of land as you go west from Prospect Hill Road to West Stockbridge. Just saying, yeah.
Was suggested that the town consider a down payment closing cost assistance. And a number of communities have done that, and they've gone up to 100% AMI because they've used CPA money. But, is there any interest in doing that? There's some good models. Wellfleet has a great model.
Yeah. Around here, Great Barrington
Has already done that, or they're considering.
hasn't had a lot of success, but Lenox has, because Lenox has Lenoxdale, which still has some reasonably priced homes. And in Great Barrington, they found that most of the homes were priced high enough now that even with the down payment assistance, affordable folks can get the mortgage for the balance.
Yeah.
Now Stockbridge has, like I said, that corridor, there are still some, 25% of the homes are priced under $400,000 still. It's not like I think it does make sense for us, but we have to just understand that it may not be the silver bullet just because most houses are still priced out of the market in terms of what's realistic.
If you create some affordable homeownership units, that could really be helpful.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
there are, the state does have programs too, so it's not like you.
almost every bank, we have experience because our son and daughter-in-law just bought a house in Lenox, and they got their mortgage through Greylock, and Greylock had a very good program of all kinds of subsidies that were very helpful.
And what sweat equity are we talking about?
That was a recommendation that came up a couple of times. I think there was a family that lived at Pinewoods, and he was saying that he had some, he had some ability to actually work on a house, and if there were some.
Well, that's the habitat.
And, it does feed right into the habitat model.
Okay.
And explore opportunities for adaptive reuse. You know, there were no specific examples, but if there were any former underutilized commercial buildings, mills, schools, that would fall into adaptive reuse, as well as the fourth floor of these town offices. Anyway, I mean, whether we include this or not, it's really, it should be
Extreme that we have a fourth floor.
No,
Patrick's idea.
I don't even.
Wait, say it again.
Third floor.
So, I mean, if there are no particular ideas where this might be effective, I don't
Wait, what
suggest
is
we
this?
include it.
The-
Explore opportunities for adaptive reuse.
Yeah, let's take that out.
I mean, what do we have in town here that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the question. And this is a
We've got-
5-year plan, so if there's not something readily available, you know,
Yeah.
it's probably not a priority.
And the thing to keep in mind,
The selectman's office into a studio.
the thing to keep in mind with all of this is, once we have a list like this, we're going to need volunteers to
Yeah.
identify exactly what we're going to do and how to move forward on all of that.
Well, I assumed that after this meeting, I would just try to flesh these out.
Yeah.
And then you folks will have a discussion and you can edit as you see fit. And there'll be some information on next steps. But then it'll be up to you folks to prioritize and really
Exactly.
come up with an implementation plan.
Right.
Okay. Let's keep going.
Under housing preservation strategies, support the renovation of pine woods, participate in another round of CDBG funding for a housing rehab program. And I threw this in just because a number of communities that I've worked with have administered these small repair grant programs. And it said grants of up to $5,000 typically for important health and safety improvements for qualifying.
Like a failed
owners.
well where the motor goes out, it's $8,000. I just have one of those.
You know, it's easy to administer. You can't use CPA money, so you'd have to be through another source. But I was thinking through this town, maybe somebody would like to donate, maybe the first $25,000, $50,000 and, or you get a number of donors that can support it if, you know, another resource can't be found.
And these are grants, not loans.
Grants. He wanted easy to
Karen,
administer.
it's so nice of you to lead the charge on that with the first 25,000. You're so great.
Yeah, forget about
What a
it.
great idea.
Halfway to 50.
And, you know, it's also come up with a receivership program for the Attorney General's office. Have there been any properties that are really run down that either, that are a real problem in the town? Because the Attorney General has a program where they can appoint receivers to take over these properties, even if they're occupied, if the tenants are at risk. Yeah, it was mentioned a couple of times. I was just wondering if there are any properties that are a problem that we should put something
talk
in on.
offline.
Huh?
We should talk offline about
Okay,
that.
okay. I'll put a question mark on that. And then I added,
One, though, that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly which one we should be talking about, but I would rather do it offline.
okay, all right.
I mean, if it's all right, I just don't want to call
yeah,
it.
are you talking about across from DeSisto?
No.
Okay, that's my little hobby horse. You can't,
Whatever it is. You
can't see us.
Whatever it is, I don't think we should be in a public meeting.
Okay. And then just briefly, I threw in this last kind of category of strategies. First, I think it is important
Capacity building?
that there be some kind of statement about encouraging community input and education. And your website on housing is pretty limiting. And so I think there are opportunities as you start implementing really.
And which one are you on?
Capacity building strategies, conduct community outreach and
Yeah.
education on housing.
I don't,
I think it's kind of like, yeah, it's a
no, I
good
don't think
thing,
it's nearly,
please.
I think you missed the
No
big giant one.
no one's going to support that.
No, I think you're absolutely, this one is the most important
It's
one on
important.
the agenda.
It's
And I'll tell you, it's the one that you didn't put on here, which is capacity building to me is basically the local funding streams that do not rely on CPC. And there's two big things. We got one of them done, which is a residential inclusionary bylaw, but there's only two big properties, unless we change Cottage Era that qualify for that, 37 Air Lake and Elm Court. You know, and the other big one is, you know, 18 towns are gonna be putting forth in front of they just had that meeting where Lee Davis, testified in front of the tax, you know, part of Ways and Means, the 1% transfer fee. You know, when my dad died, what now, 11 years ago, we considered selling the house at first. We couldn't get 300 grand for that house. I had a broker tell me last week, that it's easily worth $700,000. I feel like I'm just speaking for myself and just being honest. This generation has made more money on their property than any generation since there was property ownership in Stockbridge. And the 1% transfer fee just recognizes the impact. I'm glad my house is worth more than double what it was worth 11 years ago. But let's face it, there has been a downside impact on the long-term affordability of the town. And I'm not just talking about affordable. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, the kind of magic mix that we had is harder to achieve here. And I think that we should have in the plan that we think the town should consider things like the inclusionary, you know, one of the things that taking Cottage to fit from 80 to 40 would make more properties, special permits that could benefit from and include the inclusionary bylaw in terms of affordable housing. I think the 1% transfer fee, nobody wants when they're selling their house that, you know, nobody wants to pay the 10 grand if they're selling the $1 million house. But let's face it, if that house was bought, I mean, we had one that was bought in 2022 for 1.3 that just sold in 2023 for 1.8. And I'm sorry, 18 grand is 1% of that. I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad.
Well, I was going to put that under capitalized.
As long as the buyer is paying, I don't feel bad. You know, it's like,
But I thought the idea was
under-
to split.
not my idea. I think the buyer should pay, but that's up to the town.
Usually towns decide when the buyer or the seller, but I was going to add actually those things under the capitalized housing
Yeah.
trust fund. Because if you do have a transfer tax based on sales,
Right.
it should go right to the housing trust.
It does, absolutely.
And,
That's what
that's how they're doing
Yeah,
it.
that's how they're doing it. And it just acknowledges that it's great to bring new people in. It's great when we have these like, look at that tiny house that was down by the causeway. And once again, this is a town of controversy. So there's some controversy over the design of the house. But let's face it, it was a house that was assessed a couple $100 grand. That's now going to be assessed at $3 million. And that's great for all of us. But it can't just be about that. Because there has to be some kind of mix in this. And I really feel like,
Where's the $3 million house?
I'm not calling that house, but I'm just saying, there's two down by the causeway. One on each side.
That's why you're doing this plan, for a good reason for doing this plan,
Yeah,
is to really.
exactly.
So-
I want to kind of keep it.
Select board did not approve putting Stockbridge on the list of communities that would seek this.
No, in fairness to Chuck, Chuck felt, just like Steve Bannon felt, that it should be a clean special permit clean special town meeting for the schools. And it was exactly what the chair of Great Barrington felt too. So it's not like there was some secret plan to oppose this. I think that this is a reasonable one that can come up at the annual town meeting, as well as now Great Barrington and some other towns. So, and to their credit, my colleagues did, the senior work off is such an easy one to adopt. It's a 1-minute discussion, I think, at town hall. It happened to be something that we weren't in compliance on, and it's an easy fix, and they did support that. So I think that the one that was more controversial, I would have liked to have seen it get considered with the towns from the rest of the state, but it wasn't an unreasonable position for those guys to oppose my position on that. So I just want to make sure. What?
Two comments on the transfer tax.
Yeah.
One is it's not a complete loss because it reduces your capital gains.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there is a tax credit for it because it basically reduces your capital gains tax on those significant gains that people might inure to them from the sale. And the other one is, and I just went through this with a small parcel. We have we have an interval ownership in Beaver Creek, Colorado, and just transferred it from joint ownership to one of our trusts. And in Colorado, they have a transfer tax, but there's an exclusion if you're transferring it to a family member. And so that's an exclusionary.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so if you're transferring it within, like we did, joint ownership to a trust, or, to a family member, to a child, or, a sib or whatever, then the transfer tax gets waived. But so I think those two issues, if we're going to do a transfer tax, I think need to be highlighted. One, the reduction in the capital gains that will inure to them, and capital gains tax that will inure to them from the gain, and also that one exclusionary clause.
And because it's not allowed in Massachusetts right now, you have to get what's called a home rule petition.
Right.
To even consider writing a bylaw, we have to get permission from the legislature to write a bylaw that then the town would have to vote on. So as we discuss these things, we're not discussing the actual implementation of a bylaw that would have a transfer fee. We're only discussing asking permission to write one from, the State House. So
Maybe they'll revive the legislation.
Yeah, they might be in the tax bond bill.
It died in
Anything's
committee.
possible.
It didn't,
Couldn't he just run one through for us? Why does that?
Because the real estate brokers are largely opposed to this.
Right.
And as we heard in our meeting, there's some feeling that anything that makes it a little harder to sell. I mean, look at, we had someone in town hall who's selling a parent's house who passed away. And, the brokers tell her to list it at X. She listed it at X plus 100 grand. It's enough for the first day. Because, a lot of times the brokers just want things to sell fast. Anything that basically creates an impediment to that. But, we work for the people of the town as far as I'm concerned, not, others.
Special interest.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we should put that one front and center because CPC at best, you're going to get proposals coming in from Pine Woods and Heaton Court. That's not going away. And so, even if we were to get a full third of the CPC allotment, which is 400,000 a year, and then half of that were to go to small projects at Heaton Court and Pine Woods, we're looking at 50 or 60 grand a year. These policies can generate, in the case of the inclusionary bylaw, $1 million, $2 million a swing. And in the case of a transfer fee, even at $1 million and 1%, it works out to a couple $100,000 a year. And you could scale it at, or 2 million, it could be 2%. Who knows? There's a lot of ways to generate a lot of money that would impact almost very few properties and generate easily into the mid six figures a year for the trust. There's just no other way to get it done.
Does this give you?
yeah, it's very helpful. I'm still not certain on how you come down on some of this stuff, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And we still have, there's lots of time to edit, tweak, take off, add, whatever. So I'll just,
Very good.
Yeah, and as I said, I think coming out of this, we're going to have a list with probably not more than 5 to 10 things that we're really going to focus on in the next year or so.
Those things should be prioritized.
Exactly.
It's like, this is what we think is the most important thing on down.
Right.
Because we're not going to be able to do them all. And
Right.
everybody's going to have to pitch in and,
Right.
work on
Yeah.
one or more of them. So
yeah.
I think developing that list coming out of this is really important. Probably has to be a little more specific than some of these general ones, but.
No, we have to flesh this out considerably in order to submit it to the state.
Yeah,
I do, of all the things I heard today, though, the idea of and this was in Stockbridge, but, I know a kid, actually a woman who just moved from Heaton Court, moved in with her son. And he's got like two kids under 5 years old, and his well just failed. And they're scrambling, and it's like 7-8 grand. I love the idea of the small income qualified.
Yep.
You got to be, basically, you're going to have to come in with your tax returns and prove that you don't have the assets to pay for yourself. But I really love the idea. We got 250 grand in the bank, and we know that there's going to be some more coming in. And I like the idea of us looking at that sooner rather than a year from now. I think that it's a really reasonable use of you know.
The issue there, I think, Patrick, is how you hear about it. We have to have a vehicle to find out about these things. Even in this tiny little town, it's hard to know that
And
somebody
we have to
needs help.
publicize that the fund existed and that there was a process to
Yeah, of course.
apply for it.
It would have to be rigorous,
I
but
will also say, just to chime in on that, that especially people in the like sort of like the 45 age range that and below in that area, like we get a lot of, I mean, whether you want to or not, you get a lot of information from social media. And I think that's missing in the
Was that
town.
like
I
email?
totally just like Instagram accounts. Like I find out a lot of things from the trustees' properties, NOMKIG, the Mount. Like I follow their Instagram accounts. That's how I find out about events that are happening. That's how I found out about, you know what I mean? And I think that that's something I do understand that needs to be managed and run. That's a job. But I think that's something that when I search for like the town of Stockbridge, there's like 2 accounts that come up and I don't even think they're being run by the town. So that's always been a question I've had is like, how can we utilize social media to reach people and to get the information out there? It's a huge asset in that way.
Yeah.
Can we use some of our money to pay someone part-time?
not social media. We should have that conversation with, you know.
Yeah,
we have
I think that's like a larger town conversation on like just part of marketing and how do you get this kind of information out that's not just, you know, putting up a flyer at the library.
Michaela, this Instagram thing, can I get that on my American Online CD? Is that like one of the optional things I can install? That's a joke, sorry.
Yeah, totally.
But everybody knows you can't just say social media without some person managing it.
Yeah, I
So-
know. And we have the police department has a Facebook account. We need to figure out our social media strategy. It's kind of one of the things that's on the list. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Maybe it's something we could manage for the senior work club. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, that might be something where you've got, you create some accounts and get some
What
people
about
to
an
post some stuff.
internship or some
Yeah,
kind
or
of
an
local
internship.
school? I mean,
Right.
they all know how to do
Yeah.
social media. I mean,
Yeah.
the younger people.
Well, and,
Yeah.
even us like 60 plus generation, some of us, know how to,
Thank you. All right, I'd like to just fill you in. Joanna's here. Joanna and I and my husband met with the Botanical Garden. Both of the directors, their head of construction and anyway, 4 people from the Botanical Garden came over and met with Joanna and myself and my husband and talked about and gave us some very valuable feedback. If you haven't seen these photos, these are aerial photos that were done from drones that Joanna had a friend who did.
This is Pinewood shots.
This is Pinewoods, and this is the circle. And that's the family, the community room. And let me just get my bearings here. There's the playground. Yeah. No,
There's
there's
the
the,
entrance. And you go
Right.
around here.
here's the playground right now that has very, very antiquated equipment. And this is the open space, and this is a blow up of that open space. And this has garden beds in it, and this has some garden beds, but you can see that it's not really laid out in a useful way. So Joanna has done a lot of work laying this out, and tomorrow we're meeting with the playground people to see if the ideas, and we've met with, Liz and I met with the property manager, and she was excited about the idea that we would consolidate the garden here and that we would incorporate this area down to the road as the playground. And so the playground would probably be in this area, and we'd have picnic tables and outdoor
and
space
this is where it is
there.
now?
Yes.
Where's the playground now?
That's the picnic table, and that's the playground right
Okay,
there,
great.
which is in quite dilapidated condition if you have
Yeah, it
time
looks
to
like
go
a,
see
it
it.
looks like
Anyway,
a slide. Okay, got it.
it's in need of complete rehab. So tomorrow, Joanna and I've worked together, John, it's been great. And we met and we found this new playground person. It turned out that it was someone that Michael had worked with in the past. And he's very enthusiastic about her. And she's coming tomorrow tomorrow at 10:30. And to talk to us about how much room we need for the playground and how it's going to be done. And the idea is that this whole open space will be refashioned, and I think it will be an enormous improvement visually and to the inhabitants there. Joanna, do you want to say something? Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, we met with 4 or 5 people today. We just wanted them to come by and take a look at the project and ask for their input and maybe give us some idea of like numbers of how much it might cost to do the community garden project. And they're going to share with us their spreadsheet of how much it costs to do the garden that they just put in there over there at BBG. And then the playground, yeah, we're going to be meeting with the contractor. Her name is Cindy Mack from Site Specifics LLC, I believe. And yeah, she was, I mean, we're still at the kind of early stages of, I think, talking with her. I'm learning through this process that the contractors, they're like, oh yeah, we can get you all the things that you want. And when she gave us the initial estimate, there were like some price differences and things that were advertised, the price advertised on the website versus the price she put in the quote. So there's some things that we'll probably have to like fine tune, but I think she might be able to get us the 4 pieces that the kids requested for the budget. We'll just have to kind of maybe work with her or haggle a little bit on some of the prices for things like mulch. I think I found another mulch provider that could probably get us the mulch that's required a little cheaper. So, we're shopping around, but we're happy to meet with Cindy tomorrow. And, one of the concerns is just, making sure that things are going to be level enough for the the equipment. And I think, the minimum required mulch is 15 inches for safety regulations for the contracts. So I think, with that amount of mulch, we can use that mulch requirement to kind of make things a little bit more level. So that's one of the questions I'm going to ask her tomorrow is, can we try to straighten things out a little bit using the mulch in areas that are a little lower, things like that, so we don't have to do any digging. But yeah, we're excited to meet with her tomorrow, and we had a great meeting with BBG today, so things seem to be moving along very nicely. Thank you for the support for the projects, you guys.
We also, just to let everybody know that Liz and I met with Kathy Wiggins, who's the property manager there, and she greeted the ideas with enthusiasm and felt that it would be an improvement to the project. So I think until we hit our next block in the road, we're moving in the right direction. So hopefully.
Irons in the fire?
Yep. And then Patrick, I've asked Patrick to take over the coordination with Heaton Court, and he and I attended a meeting of the Stockbridge Housing Authority. And there were some things, and do you want to do the next 2 items?
What are next items?
They're Heaton Court discussion and town board updates, if there are any.
Yeah, let's just do them very quickly because we're on. Heaton Court, no, we just met with them. The board seemed to show some interest in adding some units there. I will point out that that up to 30% of the units there could be market, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be we added 10 units, we could do 5, because there's no market up there now. We could do 5 that were affordable and 5 that were market, I still remain sensitive to folks having to move out of town when they feel like they have too much house, as is happening to some people we know right now. And it's happened to many people we know in the past. So we just wanted to take their temperature, and I think it went well. And I think that this question of heating court expansion, now that the Stockbridge Housing Authority has support, at least in concept, is something that I think I'm comfortable, having the plan. And for town boards, I don't think there's much to report other than, we're definitely show up, even if, regardless of what Egremont does on Saturday night, showing up Monday night to support the senior work-off is really important. And I just encourage everybody to show up and do it. And
What is that?
the town meeting on Monday night.
That's the school, right?
It's the school and the senior work-off. And regardless of what happens in Egremont, we need to have a quorum or we can't pass the senior work-off program. So I'm just encouraging everyone to show up and I don't think that this town meeting will take very long. I think it's a pretty straightforward decision for Stockbridge.
What's our quorum? How many people have to
50.
show up? And that's enough to approve the school?
To approve anything on the warrant, yeah. You can't even have the meeting without 50.
All right. Next meeting date?
Is that right?
Yeah.
She had a cough when she came in. She's just.
Oh, Jan.
Yeah. So next meeting date, Monday the 23rd. Come to the town
Okay,
meeting.
it's the town. What
And
time?
I think our next meeting should be on November 21st? I think that's a great date for it.
I'm not available. I'll be having a child.
Okay,
And I'm not going to zoom into that one.
Well,
Nor
we
should
want to
you.
have you show us.
So that could be a big social media event. You talked about,
That's true. I could live stream it.
Yeah, you could live stream.
No one will want to see that.
Maybe not, maybe not. Okay,
When's your next meeting?
all right, when would you like to meet? Would you like to meet on Halloween? No. How about November, what do we like? Jan, what's your prep? Mondays, Thursdays? How about the second
What about the 14th,
of what?
November?
November? Jan?
Hold on one second.
November 14th is,
A Tuesday.
how about we go with,
That's a whole month from.
Wait a minute, maybe, what about the 13th?
Well, I mean, that's a long
Well,
time.
if you want to review a draft, it's going to take me
Yes.
Okay.
time.
Okay,
Is there anything else we need to meet about besides that?
The week before, I'm just full out.
how about this? I would like to
20th.
hear about that property. And the gentleman has a pretty good presentation, so we could have a
The
meeting,
Levon.
say, what about the 30th? And then meet with you on the 13th,
13th or the 20th works for me.
okay. Well, that's the,
we should do, until we have the housing production plan written, I don't think we should accelerate that conversation until,
okay,
that's just my take is it may be a little premature. So,
just to find out about it.
I think I'm comfortable with you.
It's kind of an informational meeting, isn't
Yeah.
it? To give us an idea whether it's something to work.
Fine then, want to do the 30th?
It's not going to be any kind of decision.
No, definitely not.
It would just be give him, and he's going to do it on Zoom, so.
And what time is that, we're thinking 4? On
Our
Monday the
usual
30th?
time. Can you do the 4 o'clock, Patrick, on the 30th?
On Monday the 30th?
How about you, Jen? Could
I
that-
think I can. It may have to be Zoom, but
Okay. All right,
And then also on the
on the 13th,
of November.
November. Does that give you enough time, or you want to go to the next week, Karen?
You know what, can we do the 20th? I'm just looking at my calendar and it's just not so.
That's the
we can do
Thanksgiving week.
That's not a problem for me. It's actually before I go away from the 29th to December 5th, so it's actually,
How about for anyone on the board?
Pardon?
20th? Does that
20th.
week pose a problem or?
Is that okay?
Good with me.
Michaela?
I won't be there on the 20th. That's just gonna be too close for me, but I can be there on the 30th of this month.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, and, did we lose Bruce? No, we didn't.
Yeah, he had he checked out about 5 minutes ago. Motion adjourned?
Second one? Okay, so we're meeting, we're going to meet on the 30th and the 20th.